Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. From Academy Award-winning filmmakers behind Everything Everywhere All at Once and Navalny, a father-to-be tries to figure out what is happening with all the AI insanity. The AI doc, or How I Became an Apocaloptimist, is a handmade, eye-opening documentary about the most powerful technology humanity has ever created and what's at stake if it gets it wrong. We're joined today by two of the filmmakers involved in this eye-opening and entertaining and thought-provoking film, Charlie Tyrell, as well as Ted Tremper. To both of you, welcome to Cinemophile.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. I'll ask just the basic, and I know also, Charlie, you were co-director on this. When Daniel approached you about doing this film, what was your first reaction?
It was summer of 2023. Daniel and I we're pals from back home in Toronto, and we were kind of kicking around a couple ideas of something to do together. It was coincidentally around this time that Daniel Kwan materialized with trying to get a doc going on AI, and he reached out to Daniel. Daniel brought me in. And like anyone, I was reading the headlines. I was freaking out. I remember standing in New York City and seeing a ticker tape on a building talk about the letter that was signed about AI being a greater threat than global nuclear war, and showing all the names that signed it and going like, okay, is this a real thing that's happening? Is this marketing? Like, what's kind of going on here? And I was personally getting close to spinning out on it because my partner was pregnant with our first child. So this is something that I relayed to Daniel Roher, and his response was basically like, oh, we're pregnant with our first kid as well. And we found out our sons were actually scheduled for pretty much the same due date. So that, and kind of our sensibilities as filmmakers and people and meeting with Kwan, kind of offered up this serendipity that we all just decided to lean into, and we just got started. And then here we are now.
And Ted, where did you come into the process?
Similarly, Dan Kwan, we've been friends for about 15 years. We hadn't worked together, and he's sort of, in many different ways, our friendship with all of our friends is very nerdy, and we kind of share things with each other. And he shared a talk from the Center for Humane Technology called The AI Dilemma that sort of is about generative large language models and what's coming. And he's like, I think that you should be like aware of this. And this is before the Everything Everywhere All at Once won all the Oscars, and Navalny won its Oscar. And basically at a certain point, Kwan said, like, I think the next thing we need to do is a documentary about AI. And I come from, oddly, both a hard news and comedy background. And so, the goal of the film really is to try to essentially allow any person with no prior knowledge to be able to have that. The joke we make in the film is that it's a first date with why you should care about AI. And it's really like to be able to use Charlie's brilliant animation and like Daniel's like openness and sense of humor and just incredulousness, like to be able to actually create that invitation for people, like that was really the goal. And so I was brought on after they had formed as a team. I was charged with sort of trying to get people to say yes to being in the documentary. So that was my that was my job.
Well done.
Thanks.
Because you've got kind of the all-star lineup of people that are deeply involved in this. And this is a film that it shares the tradition of Roger and Me and other wonderful films about, we see the director and what's going through his mind in real time, asking people if they share his concerns or his hopes for what AI can be. And when it's done well, that's just such a compelling watch, is to be personally invested in the person that is essentially leading the charge here. I'm going to put something out there that I heard I actually read years ago, many, many years ago, and it's apropos to AI. I think it was an Arthur C. Clarke short story. I don't know if you know what this is. And basically, it is the protagonist, antagonist, the god and the devil, whatever you choose to describe that sort of religious tension. And they had a conversation along the lines of, we're never going to win over the hearts and minds of humanity, one way or the other. You're not going to win. I'm not going to win. And they came up with the idea of, let's introduce technology to them and see what they do. That will reveal their true spirit or their
Mm.
true nature. And that's in is big bold letters. That's what it feels like AI is right now. That is essentially the question. What
Mhm.
are we really as a species? And so the floor is open.
I mean,
Any ideas?
gigantic question, Mike. But it's a very good question, and I think that it's something that I think about a lot. It's hard not to look at any technology and not get into the philosophical and what it means to be human. That's something I actually really value with technology is that it challenges us to look at ourselves, which is something I think we should be doing all the time. Yeah, it's a really tough thing because if you probably list, when you think of technology, if you list the top five off your head, you're going to find a kind of double-sided sword for any of them. Fire gives us light and warmth, burns down things. The internet connected us all, and it also flooded us with, disinformation and confusion. And so, yeah, so I'm going to stumble through this, but
No.
AI is definitely, if not the most distilled version of that challenge, where it is a technology
Yeah.
that's connected into every technology or almost every technology, and it's connected into us and our behavior as well, and our values, and it's going to show us some pretty great things as well as some pretty ugly things about
Yeah.
humanity. And it's not going to be a binary choice of, do good, do bad. It's going to be millions of little decisions, many big decisions, and it's really going to showcase, what we value as human beings, for better or for worse.
Ted,
Yeah.
without dragging you into a long
No,
discussion, I'm not really, but I wanted to put that out there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the shortest way. Are you a Looney Tunes fan? Were you raised on Looney Tunes?
Oh,
Well, I
yes,
think we're all an enormous Looney Tunes fans. You remember when
bring it.
the duck, there's sort of a duck season, rabbit season aspect of it,
Yes,
where
yes,
first it's
yes,
a handgun, then a shotgun, and then it's a bullet, and eventually, you know, uh,
yes.
humanity it has the capacity to build a gun big enough to blow up the entire world. And that
Right.
sort of Aza Raskin is in the film is frequently talks about the notion that like, since we developed fire, humanity has been kind of kicking the can of where will this technology go down the road until we actually have to have a reconciliation with what we want to be as a species. And I think that's really the enormous invitation of something as powerful as strong AI is to bring up the best nature of ourselves. But unfortunately, it also comes with all of the potential to do tremendous harm. And so the goal of the film really is to, I mean, there's so many different really powerful takeaways. One of the thing that was most key to me is that anytime if you meet any person that tells you that it is only going to be good or only going to be bad, that person, I think, I wouldn't say that you shouldn't trust them, but I think that humanity really wants to be able to think in terms of a binary because that's the way that our minds have evolved. If you follow schema theory, like every single thing that we're doing, whatever we look around, we're trying to name and categorize so we can just stay present to look out for other threats. And so the thing that's challenging
Yeah.
about AI is because there are just so many, almost infinite positive potential and almost infinite negative potential. The seduction is to want to say it's only going to be one thing, but it never will be. Karen
Yeah.
Howe in her book references like saying you're anti-AI is like saying you're anti-transportation. Like it's such a broad category of things. And
Yeah.
it becomes even trickier, and this is getting very wonky into AI. Just like the way that AI developed is that it was such an amalgamation of so many different disciplines that there was no capacity to really unite them until generative large language models came around. That when we were talking about AI, we were talking about so many different fields. Andrew Ng talks about like when it used to be like if you said you were AI, then we say yeah, sure, come in. Like the AI field was not very they didn't push many people out. And so now you just basically have it where the film begins with trying to define it. We asked every single one of the over 40 people that we interviewed, what is AI? And almost no answer was provided without first going like, oh, yeah, okay. And it's because it is that enormous of a thing. So I think
Yeah.
that just to answer your question directly, it is very understandable that people would like it to be one or the other, but the truth of reality itself is that it's non-dualistic. Like it can never be one or the other.
Thank you for indulging me. I wanted to get my Arthur C. Clarke reference out there. So
Sure, sure.
yeah, yeah. Well, I just want to quickly remind people, our listeners, that and not AI, maybe not.
They're
That
listening
we're
too, Mike.
speaking.
I hate to tell it to you. They're listening too.
We're speaking with the co-director, that would be Charlie Tyrell, as well as one of the producers of, that would be Ted Tremper, and that would be the AI doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptist. Let's go back. Let's go to the core of the film, because you've got people like Sam Altman, and oh, I mean, so many. I won't try to name them all. These are the experts, the people who've made so much of this happen to get us to the point where we are. When you were out farming for people, what was the reception? I know that I saw in Ghost in the Machine, Sam was not a particularly willing to talk about it, but in this film, he's quite open in this film about it. So, and others, what was that like to sort of gather the tribe together and for these conversations?
The thing that was nice, given the pedigree of the filmmakers, who I can really stand in awe of them because I had nothing to do with their previous successes. But the fact that the team that made Navalny is so brilliant, and Charlie's work is so brilliant, and the Everything Everywhere team is so brilliant, at least sort of provided that foot in the door for us to get on the radar. But my first job was to reach out to 90 people whose emails we've gotten in the AI world, and we got 6 replies. And so from those 6 replies, we interviewed those people. I have a very old school approach to journalism. I'm sort of an acolyte of the Studs Terkel School of Journalism, of sort of looking at the entire person and trying to know them and what their incentives are, which meant learning about the technology. And so when we were interviewing these people, we were very transparent about, the stories about Daniel and him the process of him giving birth to his first child as humanity is giving birth to this technology. And here are the things about your work that we find very compelling and interesting. We want to show the whole sort of spectrum of how people are thinking about this. And that became enormously challenging because each interview, we did over 40 on-camera interviews. I spoke to over 100 people on background, and it produced over 3,300 pages of transcripts. And then you basically had this problem of, okay, well, we have the equivalent of 75 films worth of footage. How do we consolidate that down into a film that's entertaining, that feels human made, that assumes no prior knowledge, and that will give people the intuitions they need to have about where this technology would go, and make it around 100 minutes. And that's really hard. That's why, initially we sought out to try to make the film in 8 months, and it took 2.5 years.
And also an important thing there is the balance of it all, because what the goal here was to make a film that was accessible and was a nice primer for people. And many of our subjects, many of the kind of research nodes that we looked into for this film were films on their own. We could have gone
Oh yeah.
down specific channels and made films about one aspect of AI, but we had to constantly regulate ourselves and constantly kind of practice this restraint to keep the landscape broad enough so that, it would be accessible to people who maybe aren't interested in hearing this. We made this film for the people who are not interested in hearing about AI, truly. Like, this was a way to get people familiar with what's going on.
And to Charlie's point, I think that when you have a subject that this enormous, it necessitates the making of those other films. It necessitates Ghost in the Machine being made. It necessitates, each person, the reason why we wanted to speak to so many people within each individual sort of category of folks, whether or not it's people who are very optimistic, pessimistic, or people who are very concerned about the present day harms. The reason why we wanted to have so many people in those individual sections is so that if they see Karen Howe and they say, boy, I really am interested in her, they can look at her book, Empire of AI. You can look at the different technologists and sort of see where they're falling on, kind of what epistemic sphere they're in. So you can kind of double click on them on your own time. The joke that we had was the goal of a first date's not to fall in love and get married. The goal of a first date's to get to go on a second date. So this is very much trying to be the first date with why every person, regardless of what their values are, what their background is, their political ideology, why each person should be understanding why they should go on the second day with caring about this technology.
I just want to let people know that this film is opening this Friday, March 27th. So be looking for it. And I could see easily just what you were describing, Ted, as kind of a series of films, sort of I remember when Bill Moyers was doing his show where he was talking to all these famous people around the world, the philosophy and all kinds of stuff. And it was episodic, and everyone had a point of view. Everyone had a very specific point of view. And this kind of feels like this could be a Bill Moyers. I can't think of the name of the show right now, but it was amazing that he would do. And that's what this feels like. You could easily turn it into. So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as I said, each interview is about 2 hours long, and there was not a lot of fat in any of those conversations.
well, congratulations on mission accomplished in terms of presenting us with what we are coming to, what is coming, whether or not we want it to, all those things. Yeah, I'm congratulations also to Daniel for his work, and you mentioned Daniel. There it is, Daniel Kwan. I just
We have a
pointed
lot
that
of
to you.
Daniels.
Yeah,
They're dropped.
yeah.
Prerequisite.
And before I let you go, Ted, I wanted to acknowledge your work because I was waxing poetically about Charlie's work, but you've been on some of my favorites. Borat, you've worked with, as well as The Daily Show, Robert Smigel, who I think's absolutely hilarious no matter what he does, and others. Also co-creator of Shrink. Congratulations on your work as well. So thank you
Thanks.
both, truly.
Yeah,
Mike,
thanks for having us, Mike.
so good to see
Charlie,
you.
thanks. I'm glad we reconnected. Yeah, the film again
Yeah.
is called The AI Doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptimist.
The Apocaloptimist part of it is important because if I can give you a definition, it's the
Sure.
notion that you are optimistic that we can conquer the very clear and unclear apocalyptic outcomes through collective action and through basically forming a response to those different externalities. That's maybe
Beautiful,
what I would say,
beautiful.
but
Well
that
said.
I should say it's also we don't get that wonky in the movie with it. I believe it's actually not even defined in the movie. It's sort of it just is it is an implied definition.
Very good. Well, to answer the Arthur C. Clarke question, I'll end on this, is I think humans are by nature contrarians. The Adam and Eve story is about wanting to be disobedient more than anything else. I think that's us. Thank you
Mhm.
so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And truly,
Thanks,
thank
Thank you,
you. See
Mike.
you again.
Yeah,
All
of course.
right.
Hope to
thanks,
see
Mike. Take
you.
care.
Hope the next one doesn't take me 8 years to meet you again. So we'll
Me
practice
too.
that. Yeah.
Me too, Charlie. Thanks, guys.
Bye, Mike.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.